Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Project Black T-Shirt. Today we're going to be talking about Osgood Perkins' brand new film, just hit Netflix, I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. I hope you had a really good Halloween. I had a really good Halloween. I had a really good Halloween kind of week extending out from Halloween, which is why I wasn't able to put up a video last week. So for those of you who wait at YouTube with bated breath, and I know that's all, a couple hundred of you, I'm slacking, I'm sorry. Usually it's a weekly show. We do one film review, one book recommendation. But last week, I just wasn't able to get it together in time. So, great Halloween. I sold books up in Worcester, Massachusetts with my friends Bracken McLeod and Pat Lacey. We nearly sold out. I mean, Pat did sell out. Bracken sold out. I brought way too many books with me, but I sold a ton of books. I met a lot of people, signed them up for the mailing list, all that fun stuff. Signed their books, took pictures, connected with people, talked with other horror movie fans. Really is kind of one of the best weekends of the year for me. So that was great. Did a whole bunch of Halloween-y type stuff. Saw some movies, rented some movies, carved pumpkins, went apple picking, went to a haunted house, went to Philadelphia's Fright Factory. Very cool haunt. Did a whole lot of different stuff. So one of the movies I watched right on Halloween weekend, on the Sunday, I believe, was Osgood Perkins' I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. Now, you may not have heard of this film. I actually had heard of the director before I saw this film. This is the first movie I'm seeing by him. But his last picture was called February, and now it's called, they changed the title to The Blackcoat's Daughter. A24 picked it up, the people that did put out The Witch. But they still haven't released that movie yet, so it's not rentable. You can't get it anywhere. It hasn't screened anywhere other than festivals. So that's a movie I've heard really good things about. I want to see. But I'd heard good things about this director. I hadn't realized until I did research for this video that he's Perkins of the Perkins family of Anthony Perkins fame. So he is Anthony Perkins' son. There are characters in I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, which is a super long title that I'm going to have to say a bunch of times, so thanks for that, Osgood. Characters are watching TV within the movie, and we have Anthony Perkins kind of shows up. The day I watched this, which was Sunday, the BBC was doing like a Hitchcock marathon, so I watched part of Psycho, kind of just had it on in the background. Very weird kind of confluence that maybe made this movie a little bit more special, a little bit more creepy. The plot, very quickly, involves Ruth Wilson's character is a kind of a hospice nurse. She's taking care of this older lady, Mrs. Blum, who is an aging novelist, horror novelist, suspense novelist, supernatural novelist, and we have the Ruth Wilson character is an avowed scaredy cat, someone who couldn't read one of Mrs. Blum's books even if she tried, and she's kind of uncovering this house that she's living in, this house that she's kind of the live-in nurse. She's uncovering that it has this history of violence within the house, and it has maybe a ghost, and maybe that ghost is hooked up to Mrs. Blum's kind of literary past, because maybe Mrs. Blum got one of the ideas and got the plot of basically one of her most famous novels from this ghost. That's about as much of the plot as I can tell you, because it's not a plot-heavy film, and everything kind of that happens past what I've told you is a huge spoiler. Netflix kind of scooped this up after its festival run and made it a Netflix original, and they branded it that way. It's the only way to see it. I know a lot of people watched it, and one of my better friends posted that he was watching it and just posted a bunch of Z's, I guess, to make it like he was falling asleep. I personally really love this movie. I will admit that it is a slower film. I will admit that it is dances right on that line. I know we like to throw the P word around in the horror community. We like to throw the pretension word around a little bit. But clearly, I am a man sitting here talking to my cell phone, wearing a Lucio Fulci zombie shirt that is actually an advertisement for a Philly-based podcast called Cinepunks. I am not a guy who goes in for using the word pretension because I like all kinds of different media, highbrow, lowbrow, middlebrow. I like everything as long as it is good, as long as it is a good example of what it is. And I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, I think, for me, is a very good example of the literary slash quiet horror genre. I've seen a few people throwing the word slow burn around, and I don't think that it's really qualifies for me as a slow burn, because a slow burn, you're talking about a fuse. You're talking about something that burns down to a possible explosion. The structure of I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House is kind of a constant low hum of dread. So it's not ever going to explode in a bang. There are a few really cool scenes, really kind of evocative sequences, but never that anything that I would like truly call a bang or a climax that is like completely shocking and comes out of nowhere. You know kind of what you're in for within the first half hour of this movie, and it's going to keep that hum going. I think it's fantastically atmospheric. One of the very few films in the last few years that I can name where narration, voiceover narration, didn't totally drive me off the deep end. It is narrated by the house's ghosts, which may or may not be our main character, played by Ruth Wilson. A very, very, like I said, the word I would use is literary, because it feels a lot like a Peter Straub or a Ramsey Campbell novel put to film, and it's very aware of this. It has references, visual references, and in-text references to novels. It talks about like there's like very clear like imagery that's evocative of the Charlotte Perkins Gilman short story, The Yellow Wallpaper, which is kind of one of those like very famous feminist ghost story, even though there's not really ghosts. Not exactly set pieces that I would call like jump scare set pieces, but a bunch of kind of materializations of this ghost. They're done in very novel ways, done in very interesting ways, done in very visually appealing ways. I was not bored during it for 1 second. I could see how people could be. I could see if this is not your cup of tea, if you're kind of not fully buying in. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. Watch 20 minutes of it, turn it off. If you're like, this isn't for me, believe me, it's not gonna, if during that first 20 minutes, if you're like, this isn't for me, it's never gonna be for you. But in that 20 minutes, if you're like, oh, I'm liking what I'm seeing, this is a pretty movie, this is kind of a cool, kind of chill out, get creeped out kind of film, which it definitely is for me, you're gonna love it. Yeah, Ruth Perkins does a great job. I guess I've only seen her in British things. I've only seen her with a British accent. She is a British actress. She is playing American here, and every time that happens, and I know it happens a lot, I'm kind of, if I know someone is British, or if I've only seen them in British things, I find myself mentally being like, I don't really know accents well enough to judge their American accent. So I'm sitting there like, is this a good American accent or is it not a good American accent? And I find that a little bit distracting, but that's just me as a psycho, movie watcher. You're probably going to have no problem with it. She's very good in the film. The rest of the supporting cast, although they are, you barely see, you're with Ruth Wilson's character for 90% of the movie. Everyone does an admirable job. It is a movie that feels very small, but it's that kind of feeling that a movie that knows exactly how small it is and what it needs to do and what its kind of internal rules are. It has these great cutaways to very like hallucinatory ghost imagery when we have these long pieces of narration where the ghost is talking about like the nature of a haunting and the nature of a ghost and how it's a person rotting. It's very cool and very novel take on the ghost story that feels very classic without feeling overly reliant on the kind of classic filmed ghost stories. It feels way more like a novel than it does a film, and that I mean that as like the highest compliment, because it is pretty quick. It's like a 90-minute movie that feels full. And these days, with 1,000 sequels and tie-in novels and all these different things, it's for something to stand so wholly on its own is a testament to good writing, I think. And while these ghostly monologues seem almost overwritten at times, I think it is a movie that is incredibly self-aware of the way its characters speak and the way that it is presenting itself. So it's all intentional and it feels very controlled. And again, first 20 minutes, do that test. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. for me, worked perfectly. I can't wait to see this guy's other movie. I'm bummed that A24 has taken so long to get it out, because I'd really like to rent it and check it out, or ideally see it at a movie theater. So for today's book recommendation, since our movie is so kind of somber and sober and slow moving, I wanted to go to something really, really fun, really, really quick. 2 weeks ago, I was in New York City at KGB Bar, which is a well-known place where authors go and read and present poetry. It's pretty hoity-toity, pretty highbrow. They had me, Brian Keene, Mary San Giovanni, Nick Cato, and the event was put together by Christophe Paul and Lisa Cantoral. And Christophe was kind of hosting, Christophe Paul was kind of hosting, and he was, between each reader, he would read a poem from his new book. And that new book is aptly titled Horror Film Poems. This is a illustrated kind of filmography. Each film gets its own poem. Each film gets its own illustration. It's a beautiful little book. It's kind of a perfect, I mean, even if you're not into books of poetry, it's kind of a perfect kind of coffee table read, because you have this out and you have people kind of come over and flip through. And even if you haven't seen every film in here, there are some, like, there's some big ones. There's Jaws. Then there's a Let the Right One In poem. I mean, these are great. They are mixed up in form and structure. Some of them are haikus. Some of them are longer poems. Some of them are rhyming. Some of them are free form. They're really, really cool. Some of them are incredibly funny. Some of them are very, very serious. I really like the idea behind this book. It's illustrated by Joel Amat Guyel. I hope I'm saying that right. And it does have a guest poem by Lisa Cantoral. Lisa also read at the reading, and I bought this, and she gave me a nice little. I bought this, and she gave me a nice little chapbook, which included one of the stories from her upcoming collection. I guess it's called Cartoons in the Suicide Forest. The story itself was very good, so be on the lookout for that. Horror Film Poems. I would very much recommend, instead of an ebook, I don't know if there is one, but I'll put the link down in the description. But I would very much recommend going with the paperback of this, so you get this nice looking, nicely laid out, properly laid out book of poetry. Because it's just a nice thing to have, nice thing to look at. Very, very quick read, very fun. Christophe knows his stuff. As he said at the reading, he's a writer, but he's more of like a bizarro kind of like political satire type guy, and he's just a horror film fan, so this is his kind of homage to horror films, and I really, really enjoyed this. Alright, so that was the review. That was my rambling thoughts on I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, Horror Film Poems by Christophe Paul. And as always, if you like this video, please hit the like button. If you really like this video, please subscribe. If you have thoughts about I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, since it's free kind of for everyone who subscribes to Netflix, you can go watch it right now. Please comment down below. Let me know what you think. Maybe I'm totally off base. Maybe you're right. It's a boring piece of crap. Maybe I'm right and it's close to a Neo masterpiece. Maybe not a masterpiece, but a really good, really engaging, really creepy movie. But after you've done all that, if you like this channel, if you like me, my dumb face, if you want to check out my books, right, go to my website, sign up, get a free ebook. It's got a couple short stories in there. It's got a novel excerpt. Check out my writing. Please support this show by clicking through on the links, buying stuff from me, buy my books, check out my books, review them on Amazon. That is a huge help to me. It sounds dumb and corny, but it actually helps people find the books. Yeah, I'm Adam Cesare, and it was really nice talking to you. I'll see you next week.